Welcome to to read your dot chart with Nate Levy. Today we'll be learning how to read your dot chart. So, first thing I want to say is that I feel like people look at these like a much crazier thing than they are. They're actually really simple once you get down to it. It's just, it looks like it's a lot of information, but really it's not. It's really just two pieces of information. And eventually, of course, you're never really going to use these again after you memorize all your sets. All right, so I'm going to go down the column here. If you look at your across and just say what everything is, if you look at a dot chart. So first thing, your set. So your set is just another word for your spot. Basically, like first set is just like right where you start in the show. So it's really it's just another word for spot. That's all I gotta say about it. Now if you look at your dot chart and see these A, B's, and C's, those are called subsets. So basically a subset is put in place when one group is not moving and other groups are. So a lot of times these are put in to avoid collisions or to add a little flair while another group isn't moving or anything. It doesn't appear that these subsets were really created for groups that aren't moving, because we have a few subsets where we don't move. So I think it's really just about like completing phrases and stuff. So now counts. Your counts are how long it takes you to get to that spot. So if you look, the first set will always be 0 counts. That's because you are already there by the time it starts. So in order to get from set 1 to set 2, right, because you're already in set 1, it'll have a little number that says counts. It'll be like 16, 8, 6, something like that. So you take that many steps, or likewise, it's that many counts in order to get there, because we're doing halftime. So it's not really about steps, it's about counts. So I know it gets a little confusing sometimes, mixing up if that's like when you get there or not. But just remember that if you reference back to the first set, which is always going to be 0, then it should help set that straight. Okay, so next up on the dot chart, you have your left to right. So important thing to remember is that you are marching from the position of the people watching. Or from the perspective. So when it says right, you're facing the audience, right? If it says right, it's not your right, it's the audience's right. So it's really more like your left. I think like it's easy enough to start thinking about it once you get more used to it. So just keep in mind about that. So if you're facing, for the sake of our practices, if you're facing the school building, then your left and your right are going to be swapped for this drill chart. So from the 50, or straight there in the middle, we have little markers for that. You're either going to be on it, which is sometimes that'll happen, or you're going to be to the left or to the right of it. So if you have trouble, just literally turn around and you'll get it from there. So moving on, another thing that we have are inside and outside. So if you were to start at the 50, all right, so here's your 50, all right, moving out here, that's 45, and then that's 45, okay? So you're always going to be outside the 50 because you can't be inside. So all this right here, if you're closer to the 50, it would be considered outside the 50, or you can be inside of it. So if you are closer to the 50, then you're going to be inside. If you are farther from the 50, then you are going to be outside. So just reference back to that middle point on the field, and the inside and outside should make a lot of sense when you get down to it. So like if you're on the 45-yard line, for instance, if you are uh, if you are only like 6 steps away from the 50, then you are inside the 45. But if you were like 10 steps away, then if you're like 10 steps away, then you would be outside the 45. So, I mean, that's pretty much that. You can also be on any other yard line than just the 50. And if it says on a yard line, it's easy enough. All right, so moving on to the home and visitor hashes. So, we use high school hashes. Every high school does. But sometimes we'll go to like college places. But for the center idea now, we're going to be basing this off of high school hashes. That's what that little HS means after the visitor hash or home hash. So the home hash is going to be the one that's closer to the audience that we're facing. Or if you're thinking about Duck Samford, it's where the home side is. Easy enough. The visitor side is going to be on the back of where we're facing, or if you're thinking about Duck Samford, where the visitors sit. Those hashes are going to be 14, or not 14. They're, no, 14, sorry. What I meant to say is 14 steps from either hash will put you right dead in the middle. So, I mean, that can make it easier if you're trying to find your spot and it's a little far away from the hash. So, if you were to take 14 steps off of the visitor hash and another person were to take 14 steps off of the home hash, and you guys were both going in the same direction, or you guys were both going towards each other, you would meet right in the middle. So keep that in mind. That helps me like with the longer steps out from the hash. So those blue dots, obviously, they represent 4 steps. So when it says 4 steps behind the visitor's hash, that would mean that you go behind the visitor's hash or farther away from the stands or where we're pointing instruments and stuff. So you would be 4 steps behind that, just on the dot. In front of the visitor hash is in between the home hash and the visitor hash. Behind the home hash is in between the home hash and the visitor hash also. Those are the kind of the same, they cover the same basis of ground. And then in front of the home hash is just closer to the audience from the home hash. So when you go to read your dot chart, you have to consider both of these things. And the thing that I would say is probably a better thing to do is when you have downtime, when they're not, when maybe they're setting a different section or something, go ahead and find your very next set, because that will make it a lot easier if you have any questions about it. That gives you time to ask. Then you're not that kid who can't find where to go and they have to help him and people get mad, I guess. So just try to find it before. And also, when in doubt, percussion has the luck of being able to confide with the rest of our section. So most of the time they're not going to, at least like especially for basses and stuff, like they don't rip apart a bass line or a snare line a ton. The cymbal line, they get spread a little bit, but even then you're not like soloed out, so you can always ask a question like, hey, where are we going? So that's another resource, I would say. And I mean, really, that's the basics of it. Just remember the difference between your home hash and your visitor hash. Home is the one closer to the stands or the school at the practice field. The visitor hash is the one closer to the retirement home or the baseball field. And remember that your right and your left when you're standing on the field are swapped for the case of dot charts. And also the difference between inside and outside, which is always in reference to the 50. So inside and outside is never just like a straight term, like you're not either to the left or to the right. So just keep in mind where you are on the field, look forward. You can find where the 50 is, where the drum majors are, where the metronome is, and use that to find out if you're inside or outside. And I mean, That's all I gotta say about it. So, good luck reading tomorrow, I guess.